Hi friends, my name is Jess. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. So today I'm bringing you a video about how to get into audiobooks if you're not already, and also giving you some of my favorite audiobook recommendations that are perfect for beginners. So I really love audiobooks. When I started listening to audiobooks 4 or 5 years ago, they really totally changed my reading. They doubled my reading. I can read so much more now, and now over 50% of my reading comes from audiobook listening. It is definitely one of my favorite ways to consume books, and I think it is very valid and valuable. So listening is reading, and if you believe otherwise, you're wrong. I'm sorry. So first things first, I'm going to give you 12 of my favorite audiobook recommendations that I think are perfect for beginners, and then I will jump into some ways on how to incorporate audiobook listening into your daily lives and to things that you are already doing, so there is a less friction with building this habit. So in my list of recommendations, I have a little something for everyone. I have a bunch of different genres, different age categories, so I think you could find something that you would enjoy. I definitely would recommend starting with a shorter, faster paced read in order to get into audiobooks. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is jumping into something really high fantasy or really long as one of their first listens, and I feel like this really turns people off of audiobooks, because for me, I still really can't listen to fantasy on audio. I just find it a little bit too hard to keep track of everything. So I definitely prefer and recommend you start with contemporary thrillers. Even historical fiction is probably okay, but don't jump right into fantasy or sci-fi. I feel like that's a little bit harder to learn how to take in and comprehend. It's definitely easier to start with something that's a little bit lighter, a little bit more fast-paced. Also, there are audiobooks out there that are 20 hours, 40 hours long. No. That's for down the road if you want to pursue that. I think it's best to start with an under 10-hour audiobook, because you won't feel like you're slogging through it. You'll get through it a lot quicker. I think you'll really appreciate the benefits of listening to audiobooks just that much more. So let's just jump right into my recommendations. First off, I'm going to give you 6 middle grade/YA recommendations. 2 of my favorite audiobooks of all time are Ivy Aberdeen's Letters to the World by Ashley Herring Blake, as well as The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. These are 2 middle grade queer books, and they are the best. They're 2 of my favorite books of all time, but they are also great audio listens. I feel like the narrators of both of these are just incredible, and they both have accents that really fit the characters, which I feel is a big thing for me. I love when my narrator has accents and reads different characters really well. That really makes or breaks a story. But to tell you a little bit more about them, Ivy Aberdeen is about this young girl named Ivy, and her family goes through this horrid event, Hurricane Katrina, and this has so many repercussions in Ivy's life. Her family is so busy that they forget her birthday. Her mom also has new kids, so Ivy is kind of getting forgotten and not getting the attention she really is craving. And she's also struggling with her sexuality, beginning to wonder if maybe she might like girls and what that will mean for her and her relationship with other people in her family and other people in her life. This is a very emotional, powerful read, but I absolutely love it. I definitely recommend it as a good starter audiobook. It's not very long. I think it's probably only about 6 or 7 hours, and the narrator just beautifully tells the story. It really made me sob, and I think it's a great starting place if it sounds like a story you'd be interested in. The same goes with The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James. This book is about this young girl who is raised by her mother's best friend. She doesn't really have a relationship with her mother. She also has a heart condition. At the beginning of the book, she gets a heart transplant, and so she creates this bucket list of things she wants to do with her new heart now that she can kind of be a regular girl. She wants to learn how to surf and swim in the ocean and meet a new best friend and kiss a boy for the first time, but she kind of discovers along the way that she might want to kiss her girl best friend, and then there are repercussions with that, with her struggling with her sexuality. There's also found family, chosen family aspects that I really love in books. So this is another one of my favorites, and is beautifully done on audio. Same thing with Ivy Aberdeen. The narrator is incredible, and it's not too long, so it's a good starting place. The next book that I want to talk about is Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. This is a YA story about I think 3 different siblings who were all adopted or put into foster care at birth, and so they don't know each other, they don't have relationships with one another, but throughout the course of this book they kind of find one another and start to form relationships. It also has themes of found family, chosen family in it as well, and there's also lots of different issues that teens deal with, eating disorders and teen pregnancy and depression and anxiety. Lots of topical issues that are just done really well in my opinion in this book. But this is another great audiobook, and I love this audiobook because there are separate narrators for each character, which is one of my favorite audiobook methods. I don't know what it's really called, but I love when all of the characters have different narrators, because it really makes it feel more like you're listening to like a movie or some kind of show, and just having different voice actors for each character just makes the audiobook so much more rich and full and complete and a much more enjoyable experience. So I really love this audiobook. This is another one that will probably make you cry. It is done very well and I love it so much. Next, I want to recommend With the Fire on High by 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗧. 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗧 narrates this audiobook, which is what makes it that much better. 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗧 narrates all of her audiobooks, so I recommend you listen to any of her books that you pick up, but this is probably my favorite audio of hers just because it is written in a traditional prose narrative where a lot of her others are written in verse, so I feel like this one just translates a little, I don't know why, but I just really liked this audiobook. I thought it was really well done. Follows our main character. She had a baby when she was younger in high school, and the story basically just follows her dealing with that, and it's just kind of like a slice of life story. Our main character also really loves to cook, and hearing Elizabeth describe all of the foods that she makes and like the recipes that she puts together, it's just like an incredible immersive experience, and I really loved this audiobook. 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗧 is just an incredible audio narrator. Some authors like can't really narrate their own books, but it's really cool hearing 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗧's books exactly as she would like them to be heard and experienced, because she just has a very like natural cadence to her voice and way of speaking that just makes the story come alive, and I really recommend anything narrated by her. She is amazing and I really love all of her books. Next, I'd like to recommend 2 YA thrillers that are really good on audio. The first of which is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This book follows our main character Pip, who decides to investigate this closed case murder that happened in her town because she believes the person that was convicted for it was not the person who actually did it, and she kind of does her like senior capstone project on resolving this case. And it's a really fun, really fast-paced YA thriller. I really love it, but the audiobook is like unmatched. There are really cool sound effects and different like production elements, music and things that just make this such an incredible audio experience. This book also has like some cool mixed media elements in the book, but I really don't feel like those were lost listening to the audio. It'd be cool to get your hands on it to like look at what is being said, because there's like maps and lists and things, but the audio is just incredible and it really explained exactly what was going on. So I would honestly recommend the audio over the physical book despite the multimedia elements. I think the audio is just so well done, and it's one of my favorite audios of all time. It is just really that good, and the story just makes it even better. So I would definitely recommend this for people who are looking for audiobooks to start with, because it's just enthralling and encapsulating, and it's like watching a TV show or a movie. And then the last YA book I want to recommend is also a thriller, and that is 𝗕𝗙ie by Courtney Summers. This book is really cool on audio because it has a podcast element to it, and so the narrator of our main character 𝗕𝗙ie is different from the podcast narrator. There's also like podcast sound effects and music and like radio crackle and like interviews and like background noise where they sound like they're at a coffee shop. There's lots of really cool stuff going on in this production of this audiobook, and it's excellent. One of the best audiobooks ever. This one is also very short, like all of these on this list, but this one is particularly short, I believe. But basically it just follows the story of this girl 𝗕𝗙ie. Her sister goes missing and 𝗕𝗙ie is determined to get revenge on the person that took her. In the other POV, this podcast is following the same kind of case, telling it like a true crime podcast basically, and kind of following 𝗕𝗙ie and her journey as well as the original crime. And this is just a really interesting, well done, one of the best YA thrillers that I've read, and definitely one of the best audiobooks. It's one of my favorites. I would recommend this so wholeheartedly. You definitely should check it out if you're interested. Now let's jump into some adult recommendations. I'm gonna keep with the thriller theme because I have 3 like thrillers to recommend on audio. The first of which is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. Similar to 𝗕𝗙ie, this book has a podcast element, so it is just perfect to listen to on audio because you get the standard narration of the story, but you also get the podcast, and this is the same thing. It's got sound effects, background noise, interviews with like different narrators. It's just such an immersive experience. I can't speak highly enough about all of these audiobooks that have like full production. They're my absolute favorite, and if you're new to audiobooks, the best way to start because you can really like appreciate how amazing that they can be. But The Night Swim is basically about this podcast host, and she goes to a town in North Carolina to cover this sexual assault trial as it is happening. And while she's there, she's kind of going around talking to other people, figuring out if what they say happened really happened. And there's also another case that this podcast narrator is investigating about this missing girl, and this happened like maybe 20 years prior in the same town. So she's kind of like doing dual coverage of both of those things in this book, and it's really a good story. It's very like like feminist driven, which I really loved, and that's also always cool to see in a thriller. So this one is great on audio. I would very much recommend. That is the way to go to listen to any kind of book with like a podcast element, because it's usually fully produced and it's just the best. Next, I want to recommend My Sister the Serial Killer by 𝗙𝗏𝗏. This is a great audiobook to start with because it is so short. I think it's like 4 hours long, so it's a really quick, fast-paced story, and it's awesome if you love feminist thrillers because our main character, much like the title suggests, has a sister who is a serial killer. She keeps killing the men that she dates, and at first our main character thinks like maybe it's a coincidence that these accidents keep happening, but she starts to realize that her sister definitely is purposely killing these people, and she kind of helps her clean up the crime scene, so she's definitely complicit in these crimes. But then her sister starts going after the man that she is interested in, so it gets a little tricky and convoluted. It's definitely a really like fast-paced, interesting story. It's not necessarily like a thriller that you might in the way that you might think of thrillers. Like there's not really anything that's keeping you guessing. You pretty much know what's going on the whole time, but it's just a really good story. It's really well written and it's an excellent audiobook. I loved the narrator a lot. They really brought the characters to life. And like I said, it's a great place to start if you're intimidated because it's super short and super quick to get through. So even if you like decide you hate audiobooks, you only wasted a couple hours of your life, it's not that big of a deal. So 100% would recommend. And the last, this one's not really like a thriller, but I feel like it read like a thriller, and that is 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. I feel like this is a great audiobook for beginners because, again, all of the characters have a different narrator. This is awesome when there's like different points of view because I feel like it really differentiates who's talking and whose point of view you're viewing the story from at that moment. I think it enhances the reading experience so much for me. So that's one of the great things about this audiobook. Also, this is a good audiobook, I feel like, because it's almost like a little bit mindless. So it's perfect like introduction to it because there's not really a whole lot. I mean, there's like different characters to follow, but it's kind of like a surface level read. You don't have to be like super invested and super paying attention. So if you tune out for a minute, you're gonna still probably get the same story out of it. But I really loved this story too. Like I thought it was really very fascinating and engaging and interesting. Also, it's set in Australia, so all the narrators have Australian accents, which is great. I love when my narrators have an accent. I feel like it just makes the audiobook that much more interesting to listen to. Now, this one is a little bit long, but don't be intimidated because I really felt like it flies by just because the story is so engaging. And like I said, it kind of reads like a thriller. I didn't even really tell you what it's about, but basically it's about these 9 perfect strangers and they all go to this like health resort that they found on the internet for like a week retreat, and there's all these like rules that they have to follow, and they start to realize that it's kind of a weird place and the lady that runs it's a little bit off a rocker, and that there might be some more sinister stuff going on behind the scenes that they weren't really aware of when they booked their vacation. So this is a really fun one to read. It is a little bit longer like I mentioned, but I think it's definitely like a very easy read, so I think it is a good place to start if you're interested in audiobooks. If you're interested in nonfiction, In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado is an excellent audiobook. The subject matter of this one is a little bit heavier, so just like be aware of that going in, but Carmen narrates this book herself, which is amazing and just adds so much more dimension to the story because it is Carmen's own story. This is basically Carmen telling the story of her abusive relationship and how it came to be, how she ended up getting out of it, and how she worked through the trauma, and it uses the house as this narrative metaphorical structure within the story, and like each chapter is a different like kind of house. It is just incredible writing, honestly, and I think the audio enhances it. Just listening to Carmen tell the story in the cadence that she wants it to be told and like the way she wants it to be told, it just really increased my empathy for her in that situation that she was in. This definitely is a powerful read, like I said, but it's also pretty short and easy to get through if you're intimidated by audio. But if you really love nonfiction, this is a great place to start, so I really would recommend this one as well. Now transitioning more into like literary fiction picks. One of my favorite literary fiction audiobooks is The Girl with the Loud Voice by Abigail. This book takes place in Nigeria, and the narrator of this book uses a Nigerian accent, and so it's really very interesting to hear the character come to life in that way, and the Nigerian accent that the narrator has is very like musical and beautiful to listen to, so I loved consuming the story this way. I feel like it really brought the character's voice to life. If you didn't know, this book follows our main character Aduni, and Aduni is like a young Nigerian girl and all she wants to do is get an education and make her own way in the world, but unfortunately her situation is not allowing her to do so. Her father actually like sells her into this arranged marriage, which is really abusive and horrible. Aduni eventually escapes from this, but then she kind of just escapes from one bad situation into another where she is working as a housemaid and making money, but she's still being abused and she's still not able to advance her station in life. But at least in this new station situation, she meets some people that are willing to help her, and she kind of can work towards getting to the place that she wants to be. The story is just a really, really incredible story. I loved it so much. And the writing is really cool because as you go through, you can see 𝗙𝗏's English like get better and progress throughout the story and the narrative and like the actual language that's used to tell the story, and you can hear it in the narration as well. The narrator becomes like a more confident English speaker throughout the story. It's just really cool like writing style and technique that I feel like is actually translated really well to the audio version of the story. And like I said, it just really brings so much life to 𝗙𝗏's character, hearing her voice and her inflections and just the passion and excitement she has for life. I don't know. I really loved this audiobook, and I think it's a really great place to start, especially if you love literary fiction. And then I saved the best for last. My absolute favorite audiobook of all time is 𝗙𝗍 Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This audiobook is literally unmatched. There is not a single audiobook better than this one that exists out in the world. If you think that there's a better one, let me know, because I'm very doubtful that you will be able to convince me otherwise. But basically the story follows our main character, 𝗙𝗍 Jones. 𝗙𝗍 Jones is kind of like Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. That's kind of like the inspiration behind the story. It's this like rock band of the 70s, and it follows how they get together and how they like fell apart and just their journey through the music industry. And it's told in an interview narrative style. So somebody is interviewing each member of the band, and then it's like spliced together in an like interview article type of style, which is really, really cool. And it's awesome listening to the audiobook because you feel like you're listening to the recordings of the interview. There's a narrator for the interview, there's a narrator for each different character. It's just so immaculately done, and there's such a high production value of this story. It's incredible. It brought it to life so much. I don't know if I had read it physically if I would have liked it as much as I loved it, but the audio definitely made it one of my favorite books of all time. It just transformed it that much for me, and I absolutely loved it to death. And I think it would be one of the best audiobooks to start with because you would just be blown away by like how amazing an audiobook can be. I know I'm hyping it up a lot, but it's really just that good. I promise it's that good. Alright, so those are my audiobook recommendations. Now I want to just talk a little bit about how you can incorporate audiobook listening into your everyday life. I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds nice, but like I don't want to just sit there and listen to a book. And I agree. I would go crazy doing that. I could never. Sometimes I do it and I like do a Sudoku or like a puzzle or something, but I have to like be doing something else. I can't just sit there and listen. I just can't. So some ideas of things that you could do while you're listening. One thing I used to love to do is listen to the audiobook during my commute while I was driving. I used to have a pretty long commute to work when I worked at the airport, so I'd have like an hour each way to listen to an audiobook, which would knock out a lot of reading for me. I also really love listening to audiobooks while I do chores. If you're cleaning, doing laundry, cooking dinner, doing the dishes, literally any like menial mindless task that you're doing is a great time to listen to an audiobook. Then you can be double as productive, which we love. And if you create content like I do, I actually love to listen to audiobooks while I'm taking pictures, while I'm making thumbnails, and also while I'm like cutting out the dead space of my videos when I'm editing. I feel like that's like, I get a ton of audiobook listening done when I do that. So pretty much any menial task that you do during the day would be a great time to listen to an audiobook. And I think you'd really be surprised by how much time you actually have in your day-to-day life where you can incorporate listening to an audiobook and just like get in double as much reading as you would otherwise, because you can do it, you can listen while you're doing other things, which is one of my favorite parts of audiobooks. And they're always on your phone, so you can take them anywhere. You can like listen to them while you're on the treadmill, when you're driving, while you're grocery shopping, whatever. There's so many options, and audiobooks just really changed my reading, so I would definitely recommend giving them a shot if you haven't already. Also, if you're wondering where to listen to audiobooks, obviously you can listen using Audible. Another way I like to use is Scribd. It is a monthly subscription and you get a set number of audiobooks that you can like rent every month for $8.99. I have a link down below that will get you your first 2 months free, I believe, if not just 1 month. I think it's 2 though. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Get like 2 months worth of free audiobooks. That's awesome. I'll put a link for a free 30-day trial for Audible as well down below. There's definitely ways to hack Audible so you don't ever have to pay them anything, so get on that. But also you can listen to audiobooks for free using the Libby app or the Hoopla app. Most libraries offer one of the two. If you link your library card, you can rent audiobooks totally for free. That's like where I get most of my audiobooks, honestly. Libby is the best. I love it so much. And finally, you can also listen to audiobooks through Libro.fm. I will have another link in the description for them. They're great because they're kind of similar to Audible in that you buy an audiobook and it stays in your library forever. But instead of supporting a horrible corporation, Libro FM donates proceeds to local bookstores and different independent booksellers in order to keep them alive and running, which I just think is so great. So definitely recommend 𝗙𝗶 FM, links down below as well. So definitely check out all of those places to listen to audiobooks. I honestly use all of them because I consume a lot of audiobooks, but yeah, you can definitely find your preference and what works for you. So that is all for this video today. Let me know down below what your favorite audiobook is, because I would love to know, because I'm always looking for the best audiobooks out there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here. All the relevant links in the description down below. Leave me the headphone emoji if you watched this entire way. Also follow me on Instagram and Twitter to keep up with me on the day-to-day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.